Out of the Box with Rosie Tran here with Yoshi Obayashi, podcaster, host of Yoshi Didn't, and also stand-up comedian. Yoshi, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. We're just jumping at it.
Yes, we are.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
I can't tell. All right.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about your travels because you're one of my favorite comedians, and also I know that you've been to a lot of countries. How many countries have you actually been to?
I think around 40, 41.
41 countries?
40 or 41.
How many do you go to a year?
Depends on the year, but last couple of years been tough to do because I lost my job almost 21 months ago.
And you're homeless?
I'm homeless. I don't have to, but priority, right? Like you and your husband made a decision to have home or homes, so you guys made a priority, and likewise, my priority is always travel before insurance, before all the other needs that I have to think about. And it's a little bit extreme, but if I have to live on other people's couch to do it, I'll do that. If I have to sleep in my car, which I have done, I will do it, So
how did you get hit with the travel bug? Like, what was the first experience that you had where you were like, wow, I need to travel?
It was very hard. Excuse me, I'm thirsty. It was very hard in the beginning because, as you know, I was a legal alien for a long time. And I didn't have, I don't think I had a passport until, when did I have I don't think I had a U.S. passport until 95 or 96.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it was until early 2000 I started traveling.
So you were an illegal immigrant. Where did you come from originally?
Osaka, Japan. It's weird to talk like this because, as you know, as a host, you can't assume people listening to the show know or don't know about it. So, yeah, anyway.
And how did you end up in the U.S.?
Well, there was a really ugly divorce between my parents. I didn't know about it. And my mom in 1980 told me we were flying into Osaka to Tokyo, which was kind of odd at the time. Osaka is kind of like the Chicago/Detroit of Japan, and Tokyo is obviously Washington, D.C., L.A., New York combined in one place. Usually you would take bullet train, 3-4 hours. For whatever reason, my mother decided to take the flight. I like flying in planes. I didn't really question it until we woke up next morning. We were in Hawaii, and she finally told me that my parents were divorced. And
so that was the last time you saw your dad. You just woke up and
in
Hawaii.
I saw him afterward, but I didn't see him from 1980 till 85, 86.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a pretty big gap, 5 or 6 year gap. But I didn't see him. It's really weird, but I guess technically it's kidnapping because they were still figuring out
the custody
and things like that. And I remember when I was second grade, my mom abruptly took myself and my brother out of the house. We were living in a different part of Japan. I don't even remember exactly where, but my dad was trying to look for us, couldn't find us until finally he figured it out, and we moved in with my dad for a little bit. But shortly after, when we got a phone call from States, my grandmother passed away. That was the beginning of the end, really. My mom, I think, at that point made a decision to get divorced and get out of there. I think the only thing that kept my mom and my dad together was the fact that my grandmother was still alive. And we got a phone call middle of the night, and my mom started screaming. I don't know what happened, but I just went back to bed. And my brother, as usual, want to know what happened, but I'm always been like, I don't want to know.
It sounds like it. You're like, I don't know why we're in Hawaii. I don't know why mom's screaming.
Well, I mean, the Hawaii thing's like, it was a complete surprise, It was too late then. By then, I was back in the States. So, as far as the travel thing, I think, my family's ethnic Koreans growing up in Japan, and I have mixed feelings about Japan and Japan and Korea. I see a lot of good and bad things about both countries. But for my dad, he's never complained about Japan, and he faced more racism than I could imagine. Just like your parents, your mom and dad. Whatever the racism you might have faced, Rosie, I'm sure it's nothing comparable to what they have to face, right?
Well, I think that it's important that we explain to the listeners, because I think a lot of people don't understand the racism within Asian cultures, especially a lot of Caucasian or Western people. They just clump all Asians together.
I think what I meant was that's a separate issue, isn't it? Like there is like hatred between Asian groups.
So to explain, there's a lot of ethnic hatred against, for example, Koreans and Japanese have a little thing, right?
It's not a little thing.
Chinese and Vietnamese have a little thing as well, since Vietnam was controlled by China for many, many years. And so there's these ethnic divides within Asian cultures, even though when we come over here to the West, people just clump everyone as Asian, but there's definitely it's like the Bloods and the Crips, right?
There's definite tension. I mean, you go back like, I'm generalizing, but even if you go back like 100 years ago, you can't assume all Italians like each other, because it comes down to what region they're from. And even if you're from the same town, there could be a different district. You know what I mean? Like, people hate people. And people don't want to hear that, but, I mean, I had this long conversation with Patrice O'Neill, and those of you who don't know who he is, one of the greatest stand-up comic, African-American comic, but I think he's one of the greatest comic of all time. He passed away 2 years ago, but last time I saw him, we had a big fight, and the conversation was he was keep telling me how much of a racist I was, which I am. Which I am. I just don't like when people call me racist without how would I explain? You know those word problems you have to do in math?
Like with the trains going A, trains going B.
It's always the toughest question, and it's usually on the very last question, or they're like the bonus question, right? You can put a correct answer, but you still don't get credit for it unless you give
the explanation.
Explains how you come to the conclusion. So Patrice to say I'm racist, yeah, but give me the reason why you think I'm racist. That's I don't like the lazy part of it. Once again, blacks and lazy stereotype. So that's what I don't like.
This is an issue that I have. Is I don't like when people categorize and also not categorize. So there's certain cultural and ethnic things that people are brainwashed in society, right? So in America, for example, our society is the capitalistic society, and so that is a mainstream part of the culture. So when Americans travel abroad in general, people tend to stereotype Americans, well, they're capitalistic, or they're this or they're that. And it's a generalization, but there's a partial truth in it. So I don't like when someone says, well, Vietnamese people tend to be like this, or black people tend to be like this, and people get offended. Well, certain stereotypes are there for a reason. That doesn't mean every single person in that group has this characteristic.
Stereotypes are not lies. It's an exaggeration of the truth.
It's an exaggeration of a partial truth. So does that mean that you should get offended? No, I think that it's ignorant, actually, to say, well, this type of culture doesn't do that. I think it's ignorant to say, well, Latinos are not family oriented or whatever. Well, they are family oriented. That's a huge part of that culture. And it seems that when stereotypes are positive, people embrace them with pride. But when stereotypes are negative, people tend to get very offended. And guess what? There's positives and negatives about everyone.
May I comment a couple of things on that? First of all, stereotype is not necessarily a bad thing, because we don't have all the time in the world to get to know that specific individual. So let's say you're in New York and you're a young woman. It doesn't matter what ethnic. Well, I guess maybe it matters. But young women in New York City, it's 2 or 3 in the morning. You want to go back?
You see Patrice O'Neill, you run and hide.
Patrice is a big guy, 6'4" or whatever, 6'5".
Rest in peace.
But you're a young woman in New York City. You're trying to get to your apartment. You're in an elevator, and let's say you see a man in there 2 or 3 in the morning. Black person, Puerto Rican, and sometimes women go in because they don't want to offend them by implying by not walking into the elevator that,
this guy could be a creep or whatever.
Or mugger or rapist or whatever.
Yeah.
Or it could be, I guess, to summarize, insensitive, we refuse to get on. If I have a daughter, I'd rather her use the stereotype and not get on. It's better to offend somebody than actually putting yourself in a position of my daughter, something horrible happened to her. So you make these assumptions about certain people, but you don't have time to get to know everyone. And I don't have a problem with that. If people assume certain about me as an Asian person, I don't take offense to it.
I think when you are with someone and you get to know them very well and then you're still making assumptions, that's not good. But in general, if you're using it as a way to assess a situation, I don't find any issue with that.
And I think most people are not that honest about it, So and if I said in the subway, on a train, let's say in Europe, somebody who just happened to be sitting next to me just get up and just move away, I don't take offense, I'll be a little puzzled, but I think it's okay. I don't like racism when the guys get me on the ground for no reason and he's stomping my head and say, "You yellow bastard or Asian bastard," then that's when I say, I think we have a problem here. But even people making Jackie Chan songs or call me Jackie Chan or whatever.
That's a compliment, by the way. I really like Jackie Chan.
I like it too, but it's they're just. I think I've lived long enough. I know when someone's being malicious, and like if they're saying it as a goof, what do I care? But as long as they don't cross that line, and get physically violent or try to do something bad. People are entitled to say whatever or behave whatever.
Well, I mean, you've traveled all over the world. You've had the goodness and kindness of strangers of all ethnicities taking you on their couch, riding you around. Have you seen anything in your travels that said, hey, regardless of ethnicity or stereotypes, there's, certain, you can find good in all types of people?
Yeah, I mean, I really haven't had problems in Europe. Oddly, the place that I went that surprised me, that gave me a little bit of a hard time, was Australia and Brazil.
Really? Mm-hmm. What was your experience there?
With Australia, I always say this. I think black people have a really good sense of discrimination, racism, I have to say. Like, this is what I always say. Black people understand racism the way Japanese people understand radiation. And we're very sensitive, and it's very toxic. But a bunch of my black friends I talk to, they get there's a different flavors of racism. Mm-hmm. It's like wine connoisseur, right? Like you could take you get a sip of it, you could tell you what year, where the grapes are from. So like if you travel different parts of the world, there are racism, discrimination. It's just different flavors of it. So going back to Australia, I was there 2006 with Russell Peters' crew. And if you don't know who Russell Peters is, then shame on you. He's the biggest touring comic in the world. So I think we were taking subway or whatever, but as soon as it was me and this why am I forgetting his name all of a sudden? Camera guy for Russell Peters. We were traveling, I think Melbourne or Sydney, and as soon as we walk in this train, there was 3 white kids. They were singing rap, but as soon as we sat down, one of them started singing one of those black slave songs. He was really mad, and I started laughing because it was so funny, like, it was so blatant about it. And Jigar, that's his name, and he was really upset. But he would have done something, but he had a lot of expensive
camera equipment,
so he really wanted to do it. I don't really care, because I lose my temper a lot, but it's in situations like that I don't want to lose my temper, because it just means if I did do something, all that means is like
you're justifying them.
They got to me, or their opinion of me really matters, which it doesn't, you know. So
Well, I like to use racism in my favor. Like, I noticed for some reason in Los Angeles, there was a lot of white male comedians that have major relationship issues with Asian women. And I used to get really offended by it. I remember I was doing a show in Hollywood, and every single
what
white...
does that mean? Like they're interested in Asian women?
So I'll tell you the story. So I did a show in Hollywood, and I was the only female on the show and the only Asian. And I noticed that every single male comedian either had a joke about Asian women, or was bashing Asian women, or had some type of weird thing with Asian chicks, right?
Do you think they would have done it even if you're not there?
Yeah. I don't think they were doing it because I was there. Okay. Like, I was sitting in the back. And normally I would get really, really mad, and I felt like it was the universe telling me that I needed to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing I did when I went up there was I addressed it, and I was like, man, Asian women are really taking it up the ass on the show. And the entire audience just broke down cracking up laughing because everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one had addressed it. Mm-hmm. And so now I love it whenever I hear that type of stuff on the show, because I just call back to it. It makes my act seem even funnier.
Can I ask you something? Do you think they're doing it because they actually had a problem with Asian women, or quite often, like, you know, I like Sarah Silverman, and she was on Conan O'Brien's show, and one of her joke had something to do with the punchline was chink or something like that, which is fine. She's funny, and it wasn't malicious or whatnot. But I think when they attack Asian people in general, I think they do it because they think it's an easy target. Like, last 7-8 years, I think there's been more Asian American movement, picketing line and stuff like that. But but still, it's Asians are easier to pick on than black.
I agree with you.
Most black people are not going to tolerate that shit.
I agree with you on some levels. I think some of it was because I think, you know, Asians are what they call the power stereotype. We're wealthier than most other ethnicities. We're more successful in general.
Right.
And we also tend to have more money and other things. So...
But that's just another way of saying we do a better job hiding our problems.
Well, I agree with that. So I think, one, we are an easy target in a way, you know, because it's kind of like when people make fun of rich people. Well, if you make fun of a poor person, you're an asshole. If you make fun of a rich person, everyone, quote unquote, hates rich people, right?
Sure.
But I do think, because I do know some of the comedians personally, and one of them had a Thai ex-girlfriend, and another one, I mean, a lot of white guys have yellow fever, Yoshi. So I think...
They say what?
I said a lot of white guys have yellow fever.
Okay.
So I think a lot of the white guys did actually have personal experiences, negative experiences with Asian women, but it was so overwhelming. I mean, there was, I think, 7 or 10 comedians on the lineup, and they all had a joke about how horrible Asian women were, and I just thought I had to address
mostly
it.
White?
Yeah, it was all white guys.
How many? What's the percentage of those guys were Jews?
I don't remember. I don't know. I'm not sure the percentage. I did not see any penises circumcised or uncircumcised.
Mom, you could talk about the names. Because I think Ashkenazi Jews are very compatible with Asian people, because there's many similarity between two cultures, especially when you go in places like New York City. It's really funny to go Chinatown in New York City, because they have the oldest synagogue hidden away in Chinatown in North America, and quite often you see Jewish old women and Chinese old women playing mahjong, things like that at the park. And also on Christmas, Jews don't celebrate Christmas for obvious reasons, and a lot of them go to Chinese restaurant. But there's many cultural similarity between the two cultures, and I think they're very compatible. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg, one of the most
his wife is Chinese.
Yeah, and
Chinese doctor. She's not just Chinese. She's a Chinese doctor.
Which just sounds redundant. Yeah, I mean, they're close-knit family, I guess. Emphasis in education, and to say greedy, that's a little overblown. Money is not the most important thing, but it is important, and they're cognizant about that. So, yeah, I don't even know where the Chinese, Asian, and Jew thing went, but I think a lot of Jewish guys do like Asian women. I don't know if...
I don't know how we got... I think we were talking about stereotypes in general.
Oh, yeah. I just asked, like, what's the percentage of people were Jews bashing...
Asian chicks.
But I always thought that's strange, because a stereotype, when you watch TV shows and movies, like, I'm old enough to remember, like, Rising Sun in 92 or 93, this Japanese or Asian guys obsessing with white women. But I always thought it's always the other way around. It's more of white guy is obsessed with Asian women. I thought, you know.
I think it's a little bit of both.
You gotta remember, most of the writers tend to be white male in Hollywood.
Yes.
And there's a lot of Jewish guys. So
which is why the last four auditions I've been on have been for Asian prostitutes. Thanks, Hollywood.
I always felt this. They were masking their obsession with Asian women by
reversing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either case, I don't really care.
What about so you talked about being from Japan and being ethnically Korean.
Yeah.
Right? And you made a joke about the radiation. What's your thoughts or your friends back home's thoughts with Fukushima?
What do I think about it?
Yeah. What's your point of view? What's
there is a word in Japanese called gaiatsu. So like the word for foreigner is gaijin. Jin means people up, so it means people are foreigners. It's kind of derogatory term, but there's a word called gaiatsu. Atsu means heat or pressure, so literally means foreign pressure. Quite often when things have to change in Japan, it takes a foreign force to force Japanese to change, i.e. Commodore Perry in mid-1850s visiting Japan made the Japanese change because Japanese recognize that they have to change.
That sounds like my dad. External forces forcing someone to change because they don't want to work on themselves.
World War II had drastic change of property ownership between the rich and the poor, the way men and women treat each other, husband and wife, educate, things like that. But Fukushima, I think, first time in a long time, I think young people realize there's definitely something wrong with Japan. I think that literally had domestic realization that they have to change, They can't expect foreigners always putting pressure on Japanese to change. I think young Japanese realize that they have to change. Because this whole lifetime employment of 60s and 70s, 80s and 90s, that's gone now. And things are bad for Japan for the last 20 years. So I think the good thing was, I think young Japanese realized you can't rely on the government because they lied or incompetent. And I think they're changing. As far as the radiation stuff, it's terrible. But I would still visit Japan.
I thought you were banned.
I'm not banned from Japan. I'm not banned. It's just if I go back, I might have problems. That's all.
So tell the listeners why you might have problems if you go back.
It's old news, but I'll repeat it for you, Rosie. My dad died in a questionable circumstance 10 and a half years ago. I made my stepmother and her family responsible for it. And when I went back for funeral, I beat her and 3 other associates related to her. And I beat her up in the point, she probably would have died if I did it for another half a minute or a minute. And I haven't been back because I don't know what's the statute of limitation or if I could get in trouble. But at this point, I don't think so. It's been 10 and a half years. She's still alive. And I made a decision not to go. If I have to go, if there's a reason to go, I'll go. But right now, I really don't have a reason to. And frankly, I don't have the means to go back right now.
But you are traveling soon to another place. And
I'm moving to Sweden for 3 months.
Why Sweden?
I have a lot of friends there. I have friends in Denmark, but Stockholm is a perfect place. I have a lot of friends there, and I have a place to stay. And it'll be good to have one place for me to sleep for 3 months in a row. And I'll be doing a lot of stand-up and touring, I guess, in Scandinavia, but also podcast episodes. And Scandinavia is really interesting. The last I've been to Afghanistan, and everybody said how horrible it is. I went. I had a wonderful time. People were wonderful. You really don't know a place unless you really go there.
What's the weirdest place you've ever traveled?
Weirdest?
Or most interesting, or most something that stuck out to you as you didn't think it was going to be this way, and then you got there and you.
Well, Afghanistan for one.
Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm. I really like United Arab Emirates, aka Dubai. I also liked. I wish I had more time to spend time in Brazil. What else is good?
Now I want to talk about this because you only speak English and a little Japanese, correct?
I speak a lot of Japanese.
Japanese. Do you speak any Korean?
No, not really.
So,
I think Korean I could pick up really quick if I wanted to.
Okay, so you basically speak two or three languages about?
2.
Okay. Because I think a lot of people are scared to travel abroad, especially in America. Americans live in a little bubble, and they really don't venture as much outside as they should. So I think it's important, that you share that, because I, for one, love traveling. I haven't been to as many countries as I'd like to go, but I didn't have any issues when I traveled at all. I did try to learn a couple local words here and there when I traveled, just as a courtesy. But I think a lot of people are really scared because they're thinking this culture is going to be totally different. No one's going to be able to understand me. I'm not going to be able to get around. And here you are, having traveled to over 40 countries, and you only speak English and Japanese.
Right. I think I highly recommend people to travel overseas, because when you hear or read about places, it's not always completely accurate. It's not that media is completely going out of their way to mislead you, but I think, State Department said do not travel to Afghanistan. It's dangerous. I have 2 friends who are accomplished Pulitzer-winning journalists even said that's dangerous. It's not wise to go. But that kind of stuff doesn't prevent me to go. It's kind of like right after you have a plane accident, that's the time to buy that airline's ticket right away, because they're just not going to have another accident right away, and their safety will go up right away. So I'm very counterintuitive when it comes to traveling. When the government told me not to go to travel,
you want to go there more.
That's the place to go right now. Having said that,
did you have to get any special clearances or anything to go there by yourself?
No, I had to get a visa, and it took a long time. Like, I've been there twice last 14 months. First time, it literally took a month and a half to get the visa ready to go. Second time, literally 24 hours.
Do you think with all of this NSA security that because you're traveling to a place like Afghanistan that's red flagged, that they're questioning you, or you're on some list or something? Because I know you were on a list because of an incident that happened.
I am on the list.
So you're on the list because of the. So for those of you who don't know, Yoshi traveled on 9/11, the anniversary of 9/11, and had some security issues at the airport.
I had a weapon in my back, 9/11, 2003.
So he is on the
I'm
watch list.
I'm on the Homeland Security list, sure.
But do you think that because of you being on that list and your travels to these exotic places, that the government is watching you or has a red flag on you?
You ask me, do I have all those people watching after me?
I mean, do you think that they're watching after you? Yeah.
Well, sure. That's just not going to prevent me from traveling, because, first of all, I don't agree with this border shit. I really don't. I think people are allowed to travel wherever they want to go. I really believe that. And people vote for their feet. If you're not doing a good job taking care of their citizens, they have absolutely the right to leave that country. And I don't like borders preventing people from going to another country. I'm completely against that. And 2, all this headache that I face with visa, or getting banned in Canada, or on the watch list in Australia and New Zealand, people question me, that's still just not going to prevent me from traveling places, because I think it's silly people not to travel different places. I always marvel like these people. First of all, you don't really have excuse not traveling overseas. We're not talking about in 60s and 70s before deregulation airlines. The ticket prices have dropped. Even with the high prices, if you adjust with inflation and cost of living from 30 years ago, tickets are really quite cheap. It really is. And air travel is even getting safer than ever. And
there's also opportunities, which I was looking into. A lot of people don't know, but there's programs where you can, if you really, really want to travel and you don't have money, you can actually volunteer abroad, and they will pay for you to go to certain countries. I'm not talking about the Peace Corps. I'm talking about volunteer programs. My sister did that. She went to Mexico and South America.
I don't know that.
And she volunteered with an orphanage, and they actually paid for all of her travel and expenses. It's similar to the Peace Corps, but they have programs all over. They also have organic farming programs where you can go and farm and do other things. You can work on a farm in different countries, and they'll pay for everything and also pay you for working on the farm. Reverse migrant workers.
I want to do that.
I can find out more information for you. But yeah, that's my sister did that. She went to South America and also Mexico. And there's all sorts of organizations, and they're not, if you're not religious, they're not necessarily religious.
I'm not.
But it's just doing outreach work or doing work, and they'll pay for everything. And it's similar to the Peace Corps, but it's not the Peace Corps where you need to make a 2-year commitment.
Well, I think when you, I don't know how you do release this episode, tweeting or whatever, Facebook, you should definitely put that information because I'll be curious. Going back, I just think it's shame that I see so many couples, they finally plan to travel after years of working really hard, taking care of their family, and they're in 60s and 70s, finally make the decision to travel. And I just think that's a shame because I'm not saying you can't enjoy travel when you're older, but it's harder.
It's harder. It's physically more demanding. And also, you learn more when you travel, I think, in your youth because you're developing still as a person and who you want to be. And you get to learn about different cultures and new things and meet new people. And, everything that I advocate is just growing and learning as much as possible because I think the more you learn about other people and cultures, the more you learn about yourself. And definitely when I've traveled, I've learned more about myself just by putting myself in situations where I'm forced to react or not react because I'm in a new situation.
I take quite offense to Asian people's approach. And when I say Asian, I don't mean they like Asian Americans. I'm talking Asian in Asia. And, especially in Japan, quite often a lot of them don't take their vacation days because they don't want to be seen as not being dedicated to the work. But quite often in practice in Japan, you go early to work, you leave work late just to present this air of working really hard. In actuality, you're not really doing a whole lot of good. It's like a charade at TSA and airport. Like they're not really doing anything. It's a theater of making you feel comfortable of your upcoming trip. But a lot of them, I'm sure they're nice, but a lot of them barely GED, and quite often they're really there to harass people. Quite often, I even think it's a sexual harassment by touching people. But it's just a theater, in my opinion.
I agree with you completely. And also, they've actually had Dateline stories and other stories of people bringing in knives and other weapons because the TSA were just not paying attention at all.
I mean, would you trust these guys with your life?
Absolutely not.
I don't think you should. They're making $9, $10 an hour. And like I said, I'm sure they're not a bad people. But if the terrorists going to attack this country again, they're not going to do the airport. It's terrorism. It's always but elements of surprise. And they don't have to do a lot of damage. It's just a psychological warfare. They're trying to put a lot of fear into you. But more people get killed by car accident than terrorist attack. So nothing, I really don't have my fear is not traveling. That's my biggest fear. Not to go places.
Your fear is to not travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love America and I love California, but I appreciate America and California more after I travel more. You learn more about yourself in another country. But the whole idea is not just you travel to have a good time, but you might meet something, you might learn something, perhaps even travel to a different place that become your home or employment opportunity. And it's a shame when you travel late in age because let's say you might have met somebody in your mid-20s and 30s or 40s that could have a positive impact in your life, So you travel because it's a total package. So going back to the Asian people, they pretend like they're working all the time. In actuality, when you travel for 2 weeks, maybe you'll refresh. I think you'll be more productive working too when you have experiences like that. So you're really hurting yourself not traveling and get a rest and refocus with your career and life. But it has a positive boon to you when you travel to another country, So did you start stand-up as a way to travel the country? No. Why did you get into stand-up comedy? I liked it because I always thought it was fun, but my biggest problem was I never really thought this is something you make a career of. I just did it because it's fun, And maybe that's a shitty attitude. But now that I'm older, I think I look at my past and look at all the stuff I've said on stage. I'm over it. I want to talk different stuff, And problem is, I don't know necessarily those things are always funny to people, but last couple of times I just didn't like just conversation. I'm not even like storytelling, just conversation on stage. I'm more comfortable with that stuff now. And you reach a certain age, you can't talk about certain things anymore. I'm 44. I can't talk about, I don't know. I guess because I'm an Asian guy, I might look younger than, let's say, my 44-year-old white friends. You know what I mean? But you can't talk about girls' ass or whatever, as somebody in midlife. Or dressed a certain ways. I can't dress like somebody in 20s or 30s. I mean, you just got to move move on. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at. But I'm looking forward to Sweden because last 10, 12 years, there's been many crime novelists from Scandinavia that are doing really well, like Stig Larsson from Sweden. And I apologize to people in Norway. Joel Nesbo, he writes really terrific crime writers. And every one of those Scandinavian writers have one thing in common, which is Scandinavia have this stereotype being very beautiful, very sunny, sunny in a happy way. Like Denmark's always ranked like the happiest place on the planet, right? Mm-hmm. They take care of everyone through high taxation, education for everyone, women get treated. But underneath that, there's going to be problems in places like that. And I'd like to spend the next 3 months figuring out what's the problem in Scandinavia, And it would have been funny to travel with my black friends because he or she are better at fishing out racism in Scandinavia. Racism is everywhere, Asia especially. So I even though there's a lot of wonderful things with Scandinavia, I'm curious about the problems, You
want to find out about the evil lurking underneath.
Yeah, I mean
the dark side. There's
dark side everywhere. Like Scandinavia, when I went to Afghanistan, it was reversed. This is crazy. It's dangerous. You know what? I found more good over there than bad. Even with all the Taliban shit and jihadists and Al Qaeda members, I found the people are wonderful. I had a wonderful time, and it's a reverse. So my question is, when I'm in Scandinavia for 3 months almost, I'd like to know more about the history and the people and the food and sports and how they educate the youth. But I want to know, like, what kind of crimes do they have? How do they deal with crime? What's the tension between minorities and white Scandinavians? On and on and on. And, hopefully doing a lot of shows there. So I've been there many times. So now that I'll be living there, I'm more curious about that.
Okay, we're back. Yoshi is just making fun of me.
I'm not making fun of you. I'm just saying, I don't know when, but you will be millionaire someday.
Why do you think that I will be a millionaire, Yoshi?
Because you are very focused on it. Good for you. No, it's not a bad thing.
We just took a little 1 second break. That's the great part about podcasting. You can stop whenever you want because I was choking. And I don't know if we're going to be able to edit that out. So, yeah, I was choking in the background. But why do you think I'm going to become a millionaire, Yoshi?
Because you're focused and you're smart about it. I'm just hoping I never get up. They don't find my body in the gutter or something. That's my retirement plans. Please don't find me in the gutter.
Well, if I do end up becoming a millionaire, then you can definitely sleep on my couch. At that time, hopefully, I won't need to charge people.
You'll charge me something. So, anyway, only thing is I do love traveling, and if I couldn't do it, there's really point of continuing on, really. So I really love it. I have friends all over the place, and podcasts really helping.
Wait, so how did you get into stand-up? You said you just liked it, but you didn't really explain, because I think, first of all, for you to just pick up and travel wherever is a very brave thing. A lot of people don't even have the courage to do that.
It's not a brave thing.
I mean, maybe you don't see it as a brave thing because you're so used to it, but a lot of people don't have the courage to even leave their small town. I mean, think about it, right? So you're doing two of the most outrageous things that I think the average person can't really do. Maybe you don't see it that way but a lot of people are scared to travel, and a lot of people are definitely petrified to speak publicly in front of other people.
Well, I don't speak it well, and I don't do stand-up well, so I don't have a fear about that. But
the fact that you're doing
travel, if you have a fear, I don't know how to convince someone who's never traveled, but just go easy. My friend Kimberly Motley, she is a human rights attorney from Afghanistan, and she's half black, half Korean, attorney from Wisconsin. And she's never traveled anywhere in the world except she went from the USA, then the first place she's ever been overseas was Afghanistan. That's really extreme. That's really extreme.
No, that's great. That's brave. I think everyone should do it. Like my first time.
But what I'm trying to say is I started slow. I went to Canada, Mexico, then obviously I've been to Korea and Japan when I was a kid. But one of the first places I went was countries that is kind of
similar,
pretty friendly to Americans, which is, Netherlands, UK. You start with that.
I mean, do you ever get people saying, "Oh, you're American, you must be like this, or you must think this," and you just laugh, or because you're not like the typical American. You're very well traveled, and you're definitely very.
Well, most people don't assume I'm American. They always say you're Chinese. They do though. And that's not a racist thing. Like, let's be honest. Like 1.2, 1.3 billion Chinese. So odds are, if you're a white person or black person, Latino, and you can't tell the difference between different Asian groups, that's a pretty good educated guess. 1.3 versus 150 million Japanese and whatnot. So they make assumption, but they don't think I'm American. Even when I tell them American, sometimes they still don't believe it.
Well, my brother actually told me that there's certain stereotypical Americans that he always can tell are tourists. So if you're looking to blend in when you travel overseas, do not do this if you're nervous about sticking out. He said anytime he sees a big fat guy wearing a Hawaiian shirt, he always knows he's American because people apparently don't wear Hawaiian shirts in other parts of the world. I have never seen it, actually.
Most Hawaiians don't wear a Hawaiian shirt.
After he mentioned it, I actually started looking around, and when I traveled, I noticed I did not see any Hawaiian shirts. So he said that was his first cue to see an American. But when I traveled to Europe with my husband, a lot of people thought we were either European or something else.
Sure.
Because we didn't, whatever the stereotype is of Americans, we did not project.
I mean,
that.
if you see you and Andrew in Europe, chances are, I mean, I would if I didn't know you guys, I would have just assumed you guys from France, because there's a lot of Vietnamese in France. But well, what was the question? Like, being.
Do people ever say, do people ever say that
they don't
make assumptions about Americans, or when they find out you're American, they have certain assumptions?
They don't say that, but after they get to know me, they say like, wow, you seem to know more than someone who are typical American, whatever that means. But
I mean, I've had that experience of just shock. I think in California in general, people tend to be very California centric. For example, when I tell people I'm from New Orleans, a lot of people in California, that's their world, and they don't know where other states are. They don't know where certain states in the Midwest are. They don't know where certain states are in the South,
right? Or
they have certain stereotypes about the South that are not necessarily true. And also, like, people always tend to say that they think the South is very, very, very racist. My personal experience has been I've experienced more racism in New York and Boston than in the South. Right. Blatant racism, where people have said things to my face with no regard. Yet there's this stereotype that the South is very racist, and I haven't had that personal experience. So I don't know what that's about, but I just feel like people have certain stereotypes. But in California, for sure, I feel like people are very California centric, where I don't know if that's an American thing, but I feel like that's a California thing, where people have you had that experience?
Wait, I'm still puzzled. Like they're just. I'm not obsessed with California, but that's the only thing they know.
Yeah, so my experience in California as an outsider has been people either think of California or Chicago or New York area, and the rest of the country they refer to as flyover states. A lot of people in California, and they just
like center of the universe.
Yeah, center of the universe, and they just disregard it, and they think that there's nothing there.
I see.
Even though I've traveled to many, many states and cities as a stand-up comedian and found a lot of history and culture and other things in other cities and states.
If people are thinking like that, they're doing disservice to themselves, because I think it kind of hurt them.
I agree with you, but you haven't had that experience out here where you've met people that feel like California or Hollywood in general is the center of the universe?
In California or outside of it?
In California.
Oh. Some, but they're idiots. If they really think like that, I don't really spend time with them. Having said that, LA is a major player in the whole planet.
I don't disagree with that. I think that the media that's
it's one of the most
here,
important. Like Werner Herzog said, it's the most important cultural center of the whole world, and I don't know if it's the place, but it's up there for sure. And it's one of the great world cities of the world. It's a very important city. And in LA have so much influence throughout the whole world. Not just entertainment, but there's a lot of trends that start in Southern California that affect the whole planet. But I'm just a big California guy. This state is amazing. This state look to the future, and I think New York State, New York City is a very important city. Washington D.C. is a very important capital, but I just think those places are looking at the old world, the old Europe, and on and on. But I think California, we look at the future, Asia and Latin America, and then we're a significant player. I mean, look at even places like Silicon Valley. You can't tell me that place doesn't influence the whole planet.
So what are the 5 top cities that you would say influence the entire world?
Well, I think I'm going to combine that with the places I like. L.A., New York City, London, Tokyo, and if I have to pick the 5th one, well, that's a tough one. I don't know. I'm torn by 3 places for the number 5: Tel Aviv, Beijing, and Paris. But the top 4 for sure: New York City, L.A., London, and Tokyo. Boy, those are the.
I would say Beijing. I've never been to Beijing, but why would you say Tel Aviv? Curious.
It's the capital of Jews. I mean, you can't. I have a lot of respect for them. I mean, Nobel Prize. I'm making a rough estimate. What is it? Almost 25 to 1/3 is owned by Jews. You gotta respect them, and they're surrounded by people that want to get rid of them, and they're still there, and it's like in playoffs in sports, like a 7-game series. Best out of the 7, you win 4, you win the series. Jews can't afford it. They have to win every single one of them, or they cease to exist, But innovation and their intellectual curiosity, and not to mention their incredibly funny groups of people. Tel Aviv is very important and one of the great innovative cities of the world. Absolutely, for sure. If you're talking purely about innovation, you're talking about Beijing and Silicon Valley and Tel Aviv. So right now, as of now, I have to say. But if I could pick the top 7, then those are the 7 ones I pick. Now, if you're asking me the places I will live, just if I don't have to worry about friends and don't have to worry about work, and just purely like a living, it's probably like Amsterdam, maybe in one of those major Scandinavian countries like Stockholm.
I've never been to Stockholm, but I have been to Amsterdam, and I absolutely loved it.
I loved it over there. Copenhagen is another underrated place that I really like a lot. I think Rio de Janeiro, places like I think a little crazy for me, because I think I'll probably die from AIDS or something. You could literally smell sex in that place, But people are wonderful and stuff like that. But it was just so blatant. Like, I don't know how many times I went to counter and people made a funny eye stand, like making fun of my Asian eyes and stuff. And this is
where was this?
Brazil.
What do you mean people made funny Asian eyes? They would stretch their eyes like that?
Yeah, it's almost like Paul Gasol when the Spanish basketball team did the whole thing. They didn't do it maliciously, but like, I'm always surprised. Like, wow, I mean, they were so blatant. I laugh, but for them to think that's okay to do that, it just showed like the gap that they don't know. That's not, especially if I'm the customer. I don't think you will win a repeat customer service from me when you do that, but I was really shocked, and I was traveling with my friend Lars. He's black, but his name
is Lars.
Yeah, and we were like, damn, I thought that was just so weird. It was like white Brazilian too, and that country is so ethnically diverse. I thought it was strange, but whatever. Yeah, those are the 7. Or 10, if you add those other.
So your sole reason for going to Sweden is because you have a place to stay there. Is that what you're telling me?
I have a place to stay. I'm staying with my friend Adil. He owns a wonderful restaurant in Stockholm. Come on by, La Cucaracha. He's Pakistani, but owns 2 very successful Spanish restaurants. In the back, he has a lot of Latinos, Latin Americans, like Argentine and places like that. Food is excellent. Atmosphere is wonderful.
And how do you meet these people? Are these people you've met from your travels? Oh, he's a stand-up.
Yeah. A lot of the comedians I meet, good percentage of them in Scandinavia are Muslims. They're basically the blacks of Scandinavia, you know. I meet a lot of like a lot of Muslim comics, a lot of Pakistanis in Sweden, Afghans in Denmark. I can't remember what kind of Muslims I met in Finland. They're fantastic. They're really, really funny, and it's really interesting to see them in the two worlds, you know, because a lot of that terrorist shit that happened, a lot of the good percentage of Muslims growing up in Europe, not in America. Do some Muslims become a nutty and do shitty stuff from America? Yes, but it's higher percentage in Europe. And why is that? It's the same reason why Oprah had a problem in Europe. You know, I think in Paris or even Switzerland, she had people.
What was the issue? I didn't hear about this.
In Paris, I think they're following her and trying to tell them like places closed, you can't walk in.
Because she was black?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. I think Oprah have a dollar or two in her bank account. I think she's doing all right, but later on they apologize to her. But I think the white Europeans still have problems assimilating people or dealing with people who don't look like them. We make news whenever something horrible happened, but let me tell you, the whole world, America does a fantastic job assimilating people. We only make news when something bad happens. For the most part, we and nowhere else in the whole world where we could live with different types of people and do as well as no one does it better than we do.
I know there's a lot of issues in Europe with Africans moving in, ethnic Africans moving in,
or
Muslims.
non-black Muslims. Sure, a lot of it because some of the country was former colonial power, and they feel uncomfortable telling them the truth. And I think the blames go both ways. Their social, here's the irony of the whole thing. Their social service are so good, sometimes they don't have incentive to assimilate. So I blame some of the Muslims not making effort assimilating with the group. Even the guy who killed Theo van Gogh, or however you pronounce it in Netherlands, the guy who ended up murdering him was a Muslim. And I don't know which North African country, Morocco perhaps. It's one of those countries, the former colonies of European power. And so some of these Muslims that ended up having problem, they have problem because they don't know where they belong. Because when they go back to the various Muslim Islamic countries that they're from, people in that country say, you're not really one of us, right? They look like them. They might even speak those Arabic language or Muslim languages, but they don't quite say it the way the native would say. So
there's a name for that in Vietnam. Like when my mom goes back, people know that she hasn't lived in Vietnam because the language has changed so much and there's so much slang that they can tell. Even though she grew up there.
Yeah, so I'm sure when you go back, if you've been back, they know the difference. But those Muslims born in Europe, they're reminded. Sometimes painfully. Yes, you call yourself Dutch, you call yourself French, you call yourself Italian, you call yourself whichever Scandinavian country, but they're reminded like they're really not one of them. So that's going to have a psychological effect on those people.
Well, is that how you feel? Do you feel Japanese or do you feel American?
I'm all American. I don't have. I'm lucky that I don't have that hang up anymore.
So was it a hang up in the past though?
I think so. But, I mean, growing up, I already went through that, growing up in Japan as a Korean person. So I think it's easier. But I don't like this hyphenated shit at all. It's bad for the country. I really hate it. When you call yourself Asian, hyphenated American, African, hyphenated American, I don't like it. That stuff literally needs to be ending. You need to cut that shit, I think.
I call myself American.
I don't like this Asian American stuff at all. I'm completely against it.
But I think people are very judgmental towards it. Like I remember in college, I was on the phone with my mom and I speak Vietnamese only with my parents.
Sure.
And my roommate said, "Oh my God, I thought you were just some white girl." And there's this idea that because I don't speak with a thick Vietnamese accent, that I'm, this white person. And I also get that, I had a lot of rejection from Vietnamese people who felt that I wasn't really Vietnamese.
Oh, Vietnamese enough.
Or Vietnamese enough. And then I had that rejection from Americans that, you know, I'm a foreigner, I'm different, even though I was born here and I speak perfect English. And so it's just kind of like this bizarre thing where people like to put you in a category, I think, or put you in a box, or you're not enough this, or you're, you know, like I know you and I have performed in a lot of all Asian shows, stand-up comedy shows. And I feel that there's this judgment from the crowd, like, are you going to be Asian enough? Are you too Asian? Are you whitewashed? And I've spoken to a lot of other, you know, Asian comedians who say that they kind of have a weird relationship with Asian audiences.
Right. And
especially for you, your material is, you know, very dark, and some risque material, some blue material. And people have a stereotype, quote unquote, about Japanese men.
Sure.
And then you say certain things and they're shocking because you're not fitting their stereotype, right?
Right.
So that's why the punchline works or whatever. And I just think that's silly that people within 1 second have already judged you.
Yeah, and this only comes with years. How old are you now? Well, okay, I'm a lot older than you. I'm 44. I don't care. I don't really care. So older you get, you stop caring the things you cared. And I remember even I don't know, a few years back, I remember cleaning my stuff. I even had a diary. I kept diary for a little bit when I was way younger. And like I look at some of the problems, like this is a fucking problem, you know. Like,
so give me an example. If you don't care, what was like one problem that you were worried about?
I don't remember, but like
it was like nonsense.
It just was really nonsense. So, so as far as getting judged, first of all, you don't want to give audience too much credit. I mean, as a comedian, you need the audience, but the important thing is, because I am rude about this, you don't worry about their feelings. I don't worry about if they're having a good time. You're basically up there and like saying, look, I know what I'm doing. I'm imposing these ideas to you. Whether you like it or not, that's just irrelevant to me. And I know a lot of comedians don't agree with that, but that's who I am. And because I am a lot taller than a lot of them, so I feel like you're little people, and let me tell you, this is how it's going to go, and I'm telling you this. And you just impose it, and you don't even have to worry about they liking you or whatnot, because I really don't care. Because I feel like I'm their father. You guys are children, so you need to listen to what I have to say. That's my attitude about that. And if they don't like it, I mean, I have so many shows going bad. It's not going to hurt my feelings. I'm over it, you know. Mm-hmm. And I really believe when I say this hyphenated shit have to end. So people who like me, I just hang out with people that I get along with. It really doesn't matter if you're Asian or not. If it have to be a black person, fine. In fact, I probably connect with black person a lot better than with Asian people because I like sports. I connect with black people. They might not like what I say, but at least they know that I'm not bullshitting them. That's what they don't like. Black people just don't want to hear them bullshit because it's insulting to them.
What do you think about what do you think about these white guys that try to be into urban culture and try to be like pretend like they are like hip and all this other stuff?
If they're really into it because they like it, that's fine. But I think you could kind of tell when they're doing it just because for sake of being cool or whatever. That's just dumb. No, you should. Older you get, you should stop apologizing. You know, life is short, and you should stop apologizing. If you're into something, and if your friends take you for granted, then you need to cut those people out of your life. You know. And if you ended up with a small percentage of people, then you just got to make a decision. Either you want to be bigger groups of people that maybe they're not really your friends, or small groups of people that you know for a fact they're there because you're friends. And you just go with that.
Words of wisdom from Yoshi. Yoshi, do you have anything to promote that's coming up?
It just depends when this is airing.
Okay. Well, check out Yoshi's podcast.
But when is airing, you think?
Probably in the next week.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm moving to Sweden, so if it's airing next week, I'm gone. So, if you just happen to live in Scandinavia, even Northern Europe, like Germany and Netherlands, if you happen to have an interesting idea for a person to interview or have a conversation with, email me. It's dumbyoshi@gmail.com, dumbyoshi@gmail.com, or I'm easy to find in Facebook and Twitter account. Oh, Yoshi Den Twitter account. Just contact me, and if you have some interesting idea for Scandinavia. But I'm there for 3 months.
Yoshi's literally extremely easy to get a hold of. People have contacted him through Twitter and other things, and he's gotten to know them.
Yeah.
Gotten rides, slept on couches.
Yeah.
He is not hard to find at all. But check him out, Yoshi, and the Yoshi Didn't podcast.
And one quick thing, like, go travel, meet people, don't be afraid. Because the worst thing you could ever do is never doing the things you want to do and you ended up dying. So go and do it. Even at the risk of getting killed, I think you just got to take a chance in life, and it would be a shame if you don't do that. So I travel, I do comedy, I meet as many people as possible. And when I feel like people take me for granted, I cut those people out of my life. And then that's it. I don't feel entitled to anything, and just to have a good time, you know.
Oh, positive messages from Yoshi. If you guys like the episode, please subscribe, please rate and leave comments, and visit outoftheboxpodcast.com and donate money and help us out because we need money to continue the podcast. So thank you so much, and I love you guys.